moving forward, the great old club, the West Tigers, we hope they get a win in the next couple of weeks. But if you are one of those players, and you'd know these blokes personally, Adam Dewey, Luke Brooks, we know what these blokes can do. When you get in a slump like that, let me start with you, Wado. Have you ever been in a slump like that when you feel like you can't win, you're never going to win, everything you try is just not working?
Oh, well, I don't know if it was a slump or... Well, I've been a part of a wooden spoon team for sure. Yeah. 2014. It sucks. It sucks when you're not playing well, right? And you're at the bottom of the table in any situation. Any player there, knows, because you're training just as hard as everyone else. You actually, if not training harder sometimes, because you're searching for answers, right? So you're trying to make sure no stone's unturned. But 2014 for us was just an absolute debacle. It was obviously on the back of the ASADA period. So the investigation started in 2013. 2013, it was a hard year, right? Because the investigation was hanging over the top of everyone's head, the club's head. But we actually managed to play good footy. And then the better we played, it sort of kept us united, and, we could go through things during the week. But footy on the weekend we knew we had to look forward to. So we stuck together, and we ended up getting beat deep in the finals by Manly in 2013, who went on to win the competition.
They played in the grand final.
Did they not win? Oh, actually, yeah, that's right. Roosters beat him, and Daly Cherry Evans got the Clive Churchill. So we played pretty good footy, right? Because we went deep with them. I think they beat us by a try, and Gow got one disallowed late that might have got us the game. Anyways, it's gone. So we rolled around 2014, and we thought it would be rinse and repeat, right? We trained through the preseason, again interrupted by the ASADA stuff, players in and out of training. So there were so many unknowns during that time. It was not a great time for us as individuals or the club. But then start of the year, couple of losses, couple of key injuries. Shane Flanagan gets stood down, and then the wheels completely fell off the cart. We just couldn't win a game. There was players, out of training because they had meetings with lawyers, and then, we weren't allowed to play one week because we were going to get sanctions, and then, no, it's not this week, it's the next week. No one really knew what was going on. Mid-year, Toddy Carney gets sacked, the infamous bubbler.
Yes.
And then by the end of the year, so it was I can't swear on this, but it was not a good period in all our lives, to be honest. But in the end of the year, I broke my foot. I had surgery on my foot, and then a week later, it was the rulings finally came down that we could take the backdated bans, or if we accepted it, we could have. It was a year ban, but backdated from when the investigation started, so we'd lose 3 months. So we'd all be stood down for there might have been.
Wasn't it 3 or 4 rounds?
Yeah, I think there might have been 3 or 4 rounds towards the end of the season. Well, I had surgery anyway, so I was out.
Yeah,
I'd had enough. I was like, well, I'm signed. I'm done with it. And then I think there was 5 or 6 of us that took the backdated bans at the club. There was a couple of players who were overseas and that affected them clubs, but at our club personally, there was about 5 or 6 of us who took it. And then we had blokes coming up from reserve grade and under 20s who hadn't even been in the first grade system, and they were debuting and playing by the end of the year. And I remember because we weren't allowed to be around the team, I was a young boy, I was 23 at the time. I went overseas. Toddy was been sacked. He was over in Bali, so I went over to Bali after my surgery.
Yes.
Hung out with Toddy for 2 weeks, came back home. We got bundled out of the finals, went on Mad Monday. Actually got in trouble. I got in trouble on Mad Monday because I gave a photographer there was taking photos of the boys on Mad Monday, and I gave him a serve in the car park because I was angry at the world at that time.
You had enough.
And I'd had a few, I'd had obviously a big day of drinking. I gave him a serve. And so I ended up getting another fine from the club. And then we signed the sanction. I signed the sanction, and then I went home. I remember sitting at my mum and dad's. I was sitting at my mum and dad's, the day after I'd signed the backdated sanction. And I was like, what am I going to do? I can't go around the club. I can't be around all my mates because of the ASADA stuff. And then I rang up my mate. I said, I'm going overseas. I rang up my mate who was living in London, and I had a flight booked at lunchtime the next day, and I flew out on my own to London to visit my mate over there, and I stayed overseas for 8 weeks.
Sounds like it was the best time of your life.
Well, it was. In the end, it was. In the end, it was the best thing I could have ever done.
Yeah, but the point is 2 years later, you win the premiership. So that's how quick you can turn it around.
So from that 8 weeks, I came back because we weren't allowed back until the 4th week of pre-season.
Oh, how good is that?
So I came back. Yeah, it wasn't good for me. Who'd been overseas for 8 weeks, had done zero training.
Yeah.
Mate. Andrew Gray was our head of performance, and he was a wizard. He's a genius, mate. But we used to do these 1.2. Oh, everyone does 1.2 time trials when they go. And when I'm up and running, or especially back then when I was a young bloke, I was a good runner. I think
you still are, mate.
I think the only bloke I beat home was Sam Takatizi, who's 120 kilos, right? And he's built for power. He's not built for endurance. And it was a hard fight back. But yeah, as you say, 2015 we started poorly again. I think we lost our first 3 games, but then we came within 1 game in the top 4. And everything we built in 2015, the foundations that we put in place and the way we learnt to play in 2015 was ultimately what led us to the premiership in 2016.
So what we're saying is Tigers should go on a European Contiki trip for 8 weeks.
Come back and be busted.
2025, they'll win the comp.
Yeah. Well, wait.
2 years' time.
Wait, in saying that, so we looked at Penrith the year before they went on their start of their dominance. And did they win the spoon or went close to winning the spoon?
Ivan's first year back there.
Ivan's first year.
They had so many big things about them, but they didn't even make the 8.
Well, they had the same sort of things. They had a couple of off-field stuff going on, a few distractions, but then the next year they bounced back and then they went on to become the most dominant team we've seen in recent history. Yeah. So you just never know when you can turn the corner and what you can become.